Hello, and welcome to this series of videos, Introduction to GDPR. In these videos I'll explain what GDPR is and some of the areas that you'll need to be aware of to ensure that your organisation becomes compliant with GDPR. In this first video I'll introduce myself and provide some background to what GDPR's aims and objectives are. So who am I? Well, my name is Angus Alderman, and as you can see from the picture, I'm based in London, England. I've worked in IT and information security for over 15 years, and in that time I've run fairly large infrastructure platforms, data centres, I've managed teams and had responsibility for the physical and logical security of environments. I've also been responsible for the security processes and been through a lot of audits. The organisations I've worked for have been a mix of international companies mainly in the credits and payments industries. I'm CISSP certified and a member in good standing with the ISC Squared, and also a member of the Institute of Information Security Professionals in the UK. And apart from that, I like cricket. So what is GDPR? Well, GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulations. It's the European Union's update to the 1995 EU Data Protection Directive and the associated Data Protection Acts of the EU member states. The legislation sets out the rights of EU citizens to have their data protected and the obligations on data controllers and processors to protect that data. So what are controllers and processors? Well, briefly, they are the organisations that collect and use our data. They can be online retailers who keep records of our shopping habits, to our employers, and employers are a very good example actually of organisations that use personal data because they need to establish we are who we say we are, that we have the credentials and experience that we claim, and most importantly, they need to pay us. Another example is our healthcare providers. At doctors and hospitals, they hold some of our most personal and sensitive data. Now previously, each member state implemented the 1995 directive in their own way through national laws, and this led to a disparity in the way that data protection was implemented and enforced across the EU. GDPR now standardises data protection across the EU, and it puts in place a much stronger enforcement structure, with much higher penalties for misuse of data and for data loss. So when does this come into effect? Well, the critical date here is going to be the 25th of May 2018. And this will in all likelihood apply to the UK despite Brexit, as the government's position is that all EU law will be added to UK law as part of the Great Repeal Bill. And this will also affect non-EU organisations that process the personal data of EU citizens. So what are the aims of GDPR? The preamble to the legislation, or recitals to give them their proper name, give quite a bit of background as to why an update to data protection is required. It says, protection of personal data is a fundamental right and that everyone has the right to protection of personal data concerning them. Broadly, it reinforces the right of individuals to data protection and allows them more control over their personal data with the right to view, amend, delete or move it. It seeks to harmonise protection across the EU, enabling controllers and processors to work to one set of regulations. This in itself is expected to result in over €2 billion in savings, and it will ensure the free flow of personal data between member states, and thereby strengthen the internal market of the EU. GDPR creates new requirements for breach notification, including having to notify the relevant supervisory authorities of data breaches within 72 hours. It strengthens enforcement with much higher levels of fines that are intended to be effective, proportionate and dissuasive. Now, the regulations will apply to all organisations that process the personal data of EU citizens. I think that the EU anticipates that as large multinational organisations begin to work to this standard and impose it on their suppliers, it is likely that these rules will become the de facto global standard for data protection over the next few years, so making it doubly relevant to have a good understanding of the direction that data protection rules will likely go in the next few years. In the next video I'll be looking at some of the concepts that underlie GDPR that might be of interest to students of information security. Otherwise you can skip ahead to the third video, which is on the security of processing. Thanks for watching.